Evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Evermore podcast, your Newcastle United podcast on the Evermore YouTube channel. Me and the lads are here talking about another top tunes. We're absolutely sweating our tits off because it's roasted outside. But it's great to have PK and the Lynchman back with me tonight. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, good, Chris. Thanks. Hot to trot.
Good, mate. Good, mate.
Good. Well, it's glad to be. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm glad to be back, guys. Obviously, I've had a rough week, and I just wanted to go on record to say anybody who sent me any lovely messages on Twitter, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. But I'm so glad to get back and talk about football. And we've got some good news before we even get stuck into this. A little bit of housekeeping. We've been rattling on for ages now, asking you to subscribe and like and everything else to help the channel grow, to get to the magic 1,000 mark. I can happily say we've got it, guys. We're over 1,000. Thanks to you lovely people who have done that. We love you for it. Thank you so much. And we're looking to push on for 2,000, as Mark said today. Christ, he's a taskmaster. We've only just got the 1,000. He wants more. He's bloody terrible. It's a good job Eddie Howe's under this kind of pressure, lads. But if you haven't already, please click like and subscribe. We'd love to have you on board. We've got loads of more content coming over the summer. And then we're really looking forward, as PK says, it's down there. We're really looking forward to obviously starting next season with a bang, with new players on board, and really excited about what the club are going to do. But until then, we're going to fill up some summer space, and we're back with another top 10 or top tune, as we call it, category. And this time we're going into the midfield, lads. My favorite position. I love the midfield. So listen, we're gonna start it off here, and we're going to jump in with the lads. Their choices 10 to 6. I'm going to start with you, Lynchman. Give me your midfield maestros. 10 to 6, mate, if you can.
10 to 6. Okay, starting at number 10, I've gone with Joey Barton. Number 9, I've gone with Kevin Nolan. Number 8, I've gone with Hatem Ben Arfa. Number 7, I've gone for Bruno Guimaraes. And number 6, I've gone for Laurent Robert.
Some interesting choices there, Lynchman. We'll have a revisit of that in a minute. PK, who is your midfield monsters, mate?
Been on the drink there, Lynchman. Bloody hell.
Come on, save it. We'll give him a chance to explain himself.
Okay, so number 10, I've gone David Batty. Number 9, Czech Tiote, RIP. Number 8, I'm also Hatem Ben Arfa. Number 7, Laurent Robert. Number 6, David Ginola.
Ooh, very good. Right, I'm going to get stuck in my
Ginola at number 6, my word.
I can tell already.
Hang your head in shame, PK.
This is going to be the best midfield battle since Keenan Vieira. I can tell this evening, lads. I'm going to give you my 10 to 6. So number 10, I've got Kevin Nolan. And number 10, number 9, I have David Batty, my favourite player when I was growing up. Number 8, I also have David Ginola. Lynchman, put your eyes back in your head. Number 7, I have Bruno Guimaraes. And number 6, I have a lad that you lads missed out. Kieran Dyer is who I have at number 6. So listen, we'll raise a couple of eyebrows there, lads. I'm going to get stuck at this straight away. Lynchman, I'm coming to you, right? Joey Barton, this isn't the mean machine, mate. This is the top 10 Newcastle midfielders. You're picking a bloody criminal at number 10, mate. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? My dad said the same thing last night. I was speaking to him. I was kind of using him as a soundboard for my top 10 and got his opinion on it. And he said to me, look, you've got to look at your number 10 and your number 9. Nolan and Joey Barton should be nowhere near that list. But look, the two of them, very similar players in terms of what they gave the team. Look, yes, you're right. Joey was a very controversial figure. But still to this day, I think he's very highly thought of by the fan base. I think he spent 4 seasons at the club. Real leader on and off the pitch. He carried us single-handedly at times through, let's be fair, a really difficult spell in the Mike Ashley era. And I think he was a key figure in that team that gained promotion in the championship. He demanded high standards on the pitch from the players around him. He scored some important goals as well. Not many, but he did chip in from midfield. Look, by no means was he a world-class player. I fully admit that. But the work rate, his drive, his determination, again, the leadership qualities was why he's made this list for me. And we go back to the Arsenal game, the 4-4, one of my most favourite games, one of the most memorable games in the club's history. He played such an important part in that match, getting Abu Diaby sent off just after half-time. That completely changed the game. Of course, we all know he went on to score 2 penalties in that game also. But yeah, what I love about him is that he still talks about the club in such high regard today. And he loved his time here. He loved that connection he had with the fan base. And look, don't get me wrong. I was in an hour about him. He could have maybe sneaked out of that. I could have maybe put Tiote in there. I mean, he was one I was strongly considering. But just makes the top 10 for me. Very fond memories of Joey Barton, and I would still say to this day, extremely underrated.
Well, I can see PK was chopped at the bit to come in there to give you his opinion on Mr. Barton. Go on, PK, give it to him. What do you reckon about Joey Barton?
I like Joey Barton. He wouldn't get in my top 20. He had one season for us. He spent about 18 months behind bars picking up 30, 40 grand a week, whatever he was earning. So he made a very good living for sitting in jail with us. And actually, I think a lot of people see him more with rose-tinted spectacles. Yeah, he had some very good games. He had some shockers as well. So just not for me. But I appreciate your opinion. It's wrong.
But that's the beauty of football. We all see it differently. If we pick the same 10 players, this show would be boring, wouldn't it?
Absolutely right, yeah.
It's just as they say, lads, opinions are like arseholes, and Joey Barton is also an arsehole. Because let's be honest with you, like when it comes to Joey Barton, listen, he's a very eccentric character, very intelligent lad, to be fair. But the one thing that I think of with Joey Barton, so Mark's in the comments there with Joey Barton facepalm, but when I think of Joey Barton, I think of prison sentence, I think of getting sent off when Shearer needed him. I think of punching Morton Gams Pedersen in the stomach for no fucking reason whatsoever. And for me, he's just a chav, and he wouldn't get anywhere near my top 10, mate. But listen, like I say, it's all our opinion. There was another player there that me and PK both pulled in our kind of 10 to 6. David Batty. I think you rolled your eyes about that one, Lynchman. Just before you do, with Batty, for me, Batty was a proper battler, in my opinion. No, he was a player that needed to do the dirty work while you had the likes of your Beardsleys and, your Rob Lees and your Ginolas and your Gillespies, who, again, hasn't appeared in the bottom half of our list. Will he appear in the top? We'll have to wait and see. But, we needed a player like Batty for me to carry the water, to do the dirty work, to get stuck in, and I loved him. I thought he was a brilliant player. But you disagree, Lynchman? Do you think Batty shouldn't be in this list?
No, I don't. I think there's an argument to put him maybe in the top 15, but not the top 10. I think he's extremely overrated. He was far too one-dimensional for me. Yes, he had his job in that team doing the dirty work, as you say, but never really caught the eye enough for me. I always thought he was lacking something. I mean, he did the simple things well, you could arguably say, but he just wasn't one of those, say, elite midfielders. I mean, I wouldn't call Joey Barton elite. And Again, I go back to Joey Barton. He's in that team strictly. Sorry, he's in that list strictly for the leadership qualities. And I don't think David Batty had enough, really, with compared to the other players around him at that time to factor in that list. Again, just my personal opinion.
David Batty scored one of my favourite goals. I was at Ewood
Wimbledon.
Park when we. No. I was at Ewood Park when he scored the opening goal when we were going for the title, and that was the game where Fenton scored twice against us. But just for sheer elation, that goal. He struck it from outside the box and went in the bottom corner, I think, if our memory serves. Just the elation in the.
So are you picking players now based on just the goals they scored? Then is that what you're saying? Is he in that list based on just that one goal?
You did last week, mate, with Cisse. Cisse wouldn't have been anywhere near my top 10 strikers.
Oh, come on, however,
Mr. Offside.
Scored about 10 worldies. Cisse.
Mr. Offside.
To be fair, he did. To be fair, yeah. That's a great comment.
Are you comparing that David Batty goal to that Cisse goal against Chelsea, mate?
No, I'm not. But I'm just comparing it to what you'd said. Yeah. But for me, David Batty would have. If David Batty and Joey Barton were in that same Keegan squad, Barton wouldn't have got a look in. Batty would have been ahead of him every day of the week.
Yeah,
every day of the week. Yeah. Just for me.
I think Batty was more controlled aggression. I think whereas Barton probably had more ability as a footballer, arguably. I think, to be fair, out of the two of them, but he didn't have the brain. Whereas Batty knew how to kick and stamp on people off the view of the referee and get away with it. Whereas Barton didn't do that.
And protect his teammates very well indeed.
Very much so. Remember when he choked Nicky Butt? That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Was that the 5-0 game, wasn't it? When him and Butt went for a 50-50 and he just just choked him in midair. That was fucking superb. Because Nicky Butt's a hard little bastard as well. Yeah.
I bet he's not in this list.
Nicky Butt's not on my list, lads. I can tell you that. That's a spoiler alert. I can tell you that for free. But listen, we're talking about combative players as well, lads. And there was a player there in your list which was Czech Tiote PK. I mean, as you said, rest in peace for Czech. Just a bit on Czech, and I don't want to damper, the legacy that he has, but I don't want to sound too controversial as well. But I think with Czech, had he not passed away so tragically, I think potentially the viewpoint of him within the fan base wouldn't have been as kind of affectionate as it has been. Because if you remember towards the end of his time, he was really poor and he was quite often described as a troublemaker, a bad egg, wasn't he? Even though he probably wasn't, he was described that way in the media, wasn't he, by a lot of people?
I didn't know that actually, but the person that killed Tiote's career at Newcastle United was Alan Pardew, if I remember rightly. So Tiote had his place in that team. He was defensive. He was hard as nails. He'd win the ball and he'd give it easy. And then all of a sudden, I'm sure it was Pardew. All of a sudden, Pardew was telling him, well, you should be getting forward more. You need to be scoring more goals. You need to be more creative. Wasn't his job. When you're in that team, when you've got Cisse Barr and Ben Arfa, win that ball defensively and get it spread out. That's what he did. And that's what he did so well for me. And that's why he got into my top 10. Affectionately for that goal against Arsenal, of course, but also the second goal that never was against City, where the goal was disallowed because a Newcastle player was allegedly blocking the keeper's view. And that did my nut in the Leazer's end, because I was right behind that, and that should never have been disallowed. That really pissed me off. So he would have been probably better known for having 2 goals and not just 1 goal. But I like Czech. I just liked him as an individual. And this top 10 isn't necessarily my best 10 players, because otherwise they would have all just been, flair players. Most of the rest of them are, as it goes. So I just wanted to
agree with that. I've gone with personal choices, like what made me excited in terms of personal preference. Again, you could pick a completely different list based on ability alone. But there's a few kind of cult heroes in there, and I think Tiote certainly. Never had the most ability, but was certainly very fondly remembered by the fan base. I have no arguments with Tiote. PK, happy for him to be in that list.
No, it was, to be fair, it was brilliant when he first came as well, and that partnership he had with a player who maybe might feature in this list as we go on. But there's a comment there from BJT, which is an interesting one, because I put him in at number 6 for me, and you guys kind of rolled your eyes a bit. Kieran Dyer. Now, let me talk about Kieran Dyer in 2 different ways. I think BJT said it right there. The potential that Kieran Dyer had when he first come to the club was unbelievable. I think, if I'm right, I think Hullet signed him, and then we saw probably the best of him in the Bobby years, I think, when he was playing with Genius and Bellamy and Speed and all these other guys. But Dyer had so much potential. Pace, he could score a goal, he could link up the play, he could play off the striker, he could pull out wide. I think the biggest problem for me personally, I'll get your guys' opinion on this in a minute, the biggest problem for Dyer for me was his ego. I think his ego got a bit out of check. He started to get regular England call-ups. He thought he was in the same category as a Gerrard, Beckham, Scholes, Lampard, these kind of guys. I think when he started to get his head full of all that nonsense, he started to think he was too big for Newcastle United. What was your take on that, Lynchman? Because I know you kind of, rolled your eyes when I mentioned Dyer.
I wouldn't necessarily say rolled my eyes. Again, I did consider him. You talk about honourable mentions. I think maybe he would have a case to be in that list. But again, you hit the nail on the head. Attitude. That was his problem. He had a terrible, terrible attitude, and he thought he was better than what he was. Don't get me wrong. He did have that talent. He had that ability. At one stage, when he was very, very young, he looked like he was going to be the next best thing, wasn't he? But never really fulfilled his potential. I think if he looks back on his career, I think he'll look back with many, many regrets, because he could have been a lot better than he was. But again, in that team of brilliant players around that period, under Bobby, he was by no means a standout player. I thought about maybe possibly number 10. Maybe if I went back and changed Joey Barton after the slack I've been getting, I could consider putting him in there at number 10. But no. So many better midfielders we've had in the Premier League since over Kieran Dyer. I don't know what you think about that, PK.
Yeah, Kieran Dyer was Newcastle United's best ever corner winner. So he had so much talent, he had so much pace, but he just kept winning corners, and whenever he used to score from them. So he didn't score enough goals for me. But when he was on his game, he was incredibly talented. Keegan picked him as a right wing back, if you recall. He played him at right wing back quite a few times for England, which was a bit like playing Kieran Trippier at left back, I suppose. It's a bit crazy, but he was a bit of a party boy, wasn't he, Dyer? And I believe, I better say allegedly here, he fell in with the wrong crowd in Newcastle, and that probably affected his game. You've seen it with a lot of big egotistical players, that they fall in the wrong crowd, they like a drink a bit too much. So Lots of talent, lots of pace, very injury prone, lots of hamstring injuries, probably because it's pace, of course, but not for me.
Yeah, I think Kieran Dye spent more time at Bar Beach Club than I did, and that was fucking saying something because I was never out with the bastard when I was younger. I tell you what, mate. So we've got a comment coming there from Mike L. How you doing, Mike? Good to see you in the comments, mate. Dyer will always be remembered for refusing to play on the wing against Borough under Bobby and was one of the main. Do you know what it is, Mike? You're totally right. And if I remember when Bobby passed away, and obviously Dyer was very emotional about it. I think there was a bit of guilt in there as well because of those kind of moments that Dyer, and he wasn't alone. I'm sure, likes of Genius and Bellamy and all these other guys, the young guys at the time, helped to get Bobby sacked. And that's why we brought in that complete fucking moron, Graham Souness. If we were doing top Toon worst managers, Souness would be number one with a bullet, I think, because he was fucking atrocious. But we had to bring him in to be the disciplinarian. Oh, yeah, there'd be competition. But he come in to be the hard ass, didn't he? Because of these young players that just took the piss out of Bobby towards the end. And it was really distasteful, wasn't it, lads?
It was.
Yeah, I wasn't very impressed, I must admit. So I'm not going to cover the controversial choice of us picking Ginola in the bottom half of our list because I have a feeling he might be a little bit higher in the Lynchman's list. So listen, we've got the first half out of the way there. So we're going to get stuck in. We're going to roll into our obviously 5 to top spots. PK, I'll come to you first, mate. Who is your 5 to 1 in your midfield machines?
In at 5 is the dreamboat Johan Cabaye.
Handsome devil. Number 4,
Robert Lee.
Ooh.
Number 3, this is controversial. Number 3 is Bruno Guimaraes for me. Ooh. Already. He's probably only played a dozen games.
17.
I think. 17. There we go. I'm not looking. I'm looking at my list. Number 2 is, again, the late, great Gary Speed. Anybody guess number 1 that doesn't know it? Lynchman, you haven't seen it.
Lauren Robert?
No, he's in at 7 for me. My all-time favourite Newcastle United midfielder. The trumpeter himself, Norberto Solano.
Norberto Solano. I can't argue with some of those choices in there, PK. Lynchman, let's have a look at yours, mate. Who was your 5 to 1?
Right, number 5, I've gone with Solano. Ooh. Number 4, I've gone with Gary Speed. Number 3, I've gone for Johan Cabaye. Number 2, I've gone for Robert Lee. And number 1, I've gone for David Ginola.
Oh, see, we had to save this one to the last because it's controversial. So listen, I'll give you my list then, guys. So my number 5 is Gary Speed, absolute legend. I know if Dyer's watching this wherever he is, he'll be shouting at me for not having him as number 1. Number 4, I have Laurent Robert, the French wonder. Absolutely love that lad. What a player Laurent Robert was. Number 3, I have the handsome devil himself, the dreamboat, Johan Cabaye. Number 2, I have Nobby Solano. And number 1, I'm disgusted with you two. Bobby Lee is my number 1. Hands down. How dare you two stick Bobby Lee at the bloody bottom of your piles? I'm disgusted by it. So
I'll put him at number 2. What are you talking about?
Sorry, mate. Well, PK, PK.
Come on, for me.
4 PK. 4. That's a good shout, Nathan. No good. Yeah,
he doesn't deserve number 4. He's got to be top 3. Rob Lee has to be.
Football's a game of opinions, yeah.
Yeah, of course, mate. Of course.
PK, you had too much.
Do you know what? I tell you what is interesting, PK, and I hope you don't mind explaining this to me. But you've gone for Bruno that high up on your list. He's only played 15 games. Wow.
I am telling you now, unless we sign better players than him, I think he will be our best ever to date Premier League midfielder.
I don't doubt that for 1 second, but he's only been with it 2 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You look at some of the players that are on the list. Ginola was only with us for 2 seasons. I don't think Robert was with us a lot longer than that. Ben Arthur, who's on my list, he wasn't with us for longer. You look at some of these incredible talents. We just did not keep them for long enough. And the reason why? We had no ambition in the boardroom. And that's, I think, the most upsetting thing about everything, isn't it? These players came and went on to some of them better things. Ginola went off to Tottenham and then to Villa. I think Rob Lee, he stayed with us a long time. Obviously, that's why he was one of the top players.
10 years while him, wasn't it? But yeah, you're right. I mean, it was a common theme of last week's show, which I hosted on the strike. It's virtually everyone we were going through was saying, what could it be? Demba Ba, what could have been. Patrice Cisse, arguably not, but there was a few more on that list who were thought if we'd just kept it. Les Ferdinand, another one, should have kept on too long.
Ferdinand was with us for 2 seasons.
Andy Cole, and again, Andy Cole, it's frightening.
Yeah.
Reoccurring trend, lads, with Newcastle United over the years, even before Ashley, and that's probably why we didn't push on any further than we should have done. We didn't keep these players and build teams around them, did they? But there was a name that jumped out at me there, because I know he was a bit further down on your list, Lynchman, than he was on mine. Nobby Solano. Now, just for me, before I get your take on it, Nobby Solano, for me, one of the best footballers I've ever seen at this club. Not just because of ability, character, everything about it as well. He never complained. I think Mike made a comment about Dyer before. Nobby Solano would have played left back for us. He was fucking superb, and wherever he played, he was one of the best players on the park. We obviously sold him, which was ridiculous at the time. We brought him back; he was even better. And just even for his last little kind of cameo. And it's difficult to kind of figure out where to put him in amongst some of these star names, Lynchman. But what's your fond memories of Nobby?
The greatest right-sided midfielder we've ever had in the Premier League. Simple as that. He was one of the best crosses of the ball I've ever seen. The amount of goals he set up for Shearer. I'd argue probably half of the goals Shearer scored were probably attributed to Solano. And I honestly think he was right up there with David Beckham. Well, look,
sensationalist, maybe not, as always.
Sensationalist.
There's got to tell you what, if you look back on Shearer's goals for Newcastle, I honestly think majority of them would have been created by Solano.
The amount of balls.
If you take away the penalties,
Yeah, that's a fair comment. It's a fair comment.
Solano
the amount,
in terms of assists.
The amount of balls that he played into that box with the outside of his right foot through the eye of a needle. He was an incredible footballer. I've got to give a quick honourable mention to my pal Boda, because he's his favourite footballer of all time. Nobby Solano.
Yeah. Look, he was so technically gifted, wasn't he? But again, you talk about the work rate, the delivery. He had a lot of pace as well. He was very quick, and he could score goals too.
I went to his debut in the reserve game against Liverpool, and he scored. I think he scored a free kick into the Gallagher. Like the reserve, what would you get, a few thousand? But it was at St James's Park, so went along, me and my pal. And we saw
what was the reason? What was the reasoning behind that season? He left us to go to Villa, and he came back literally straight away. What was the story behind that?
Not a change of manager. Was it not Souness that got rid of him? Not Souness got rid of him down to Villa. I think Souness was after leaving.
It's so rare, isn't it? It's so rare that a player leaves for one season and comes back straight away. It rarely happens, doesn't it?
Souness brought him back, didn't he, on the same day as Owen signed?
Yeah, that's
because that was when. Is that not when Milner went down to Villa? We got Nobby, didn't we, as part of that deal? I'm sure that was right, wasn't it? When Milner went, I think it was. So it was not Keegan that brought him back. I'm trying to remember.
No, it was Souness. So Souness signed it. Yeah. Souness signed Owen, and on the same day, because I remember them parading Owen at St James's, didn't they? And I try and block that one out of my memory. I'm assuming he didn't make the top 10. I didn't see last week's show.
No, but Mark talked about him. Saying that, Mark mentioned him as an honourable mention, though, didn't he, at the end, which I was quite surprised about. But I think sorry to drop a minute there.
But I think Nobby was just, he couldn't run a restaurant now. I just think he was just phenomenally talented. For someone who didn't have a great deal of pace, he got a huge amount of assists and scored some great goals. Yeah.
That's a decent honourable mention from BJT about James Milner. To be fair, when Milner was here, he worked his arse up, but he was still a really young lad, wasn't he? He was finding his way in the game, and obviously he got caught up right in the middle of the whole Keegan versus Ashley situation, didn't he? Because Keegan didn't want him sold, and Ashley went and sold him behind his back because Keegan thought he was getting Schweinsteiger, didn't he? Bastian Schweinsteiger was the story. Yeah.
So he scored. Keegan played him up front for a League Cup game against somebody or other. I can't remember who. Yeah. He scored twice. And at the end of the interview, I think the interviewer said to him, "Are you selling James Milner?" And he said, "No, we're not selling him." And then by, 2 hours later, he'd gone because Keegan thought he'd been promised the pig farmer from Bayern.
Yeah,
we were never getting him, were we? He never wanted to come here.
Years. Yeah, that was just one of them ghost transfer speculations that Mike Ashley fucking threw out there just to keep everybody happy.
I think Zidane was another one. Remember, going back even further.
We just couldn't get them over the line.
Oh God, that bloody line! Moving from one player who crossed the ball loads to a player who hardly crossed the ball to Shearer at all, to the point when Shearer yelled at him. So you had David Ginola, Lynchman, at number 1. Is this the top 10 players of hair at Newcastle United, or is this a top 10 players of ability and affection, mate? Because I wouldn't put David at number 1 just simply because he wasn't here long enough for me, mate. That's why I had him low down.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. It's a personal preference. This, if I was picking a list based on, consistency and how many seasons these players were here, Rob Lee would of course be number 1. But in terms of a personal preference, my favourite player of all time, the reason I fell in love with Newcastle United, and so many fond memories of this guy as a kid. He was a wonderful player. He could do it all. What a talent! We didn't have him for that long, you're right, but that first season, I honestly don't think I've ever seen a better player at St. James Park. It was unplayable. The flair, the charisma, he looked the part, possibly a touch of arrogance. It's what I like to see.
A lot of arrogance, that's fine.
But he backed it up on the pitch. Again, he didn't score too many goals.
Guess what?
But the ones he did score, talk about highlight reels. This guy was a human highlight reel. The goal against Man United, the Ferenc Faros goal, sublime. I mean, these goals. Remember the goal against Sheffield Wednesday as well, which was a brilliant long-range shot. Phenomenal. It just epitomised what I loved in a player, Ginola. And he means so much to me personally. I had to put him at number 1.
Guess what, Lynchman? Robert had better stats than Ginola.
That's not this argument. We'll be here all night with the Robert versus
again,
Ginola.
I'm gonna repeat myself. This is personal opinion. This is not based on stats. As I say, Rob Lee would probably be number 1 on that case, wouldn't it? Because he was here the longest.
Yeah.
Sacrilege.
I love Ginola.
Call yourself Newcastle fans. Bobby Lee's number 1, hands down.
So, Chris, tell us why you picked Rob Lee as number 1, mate.
Simply the best, mate. Simply the best midfielder, for me. To go back to what PK was saying, controversially about Bruno. If Bruno's here 3 or 4 seasons, Bruno gets that top spot without a shadow of a doubt, because, the reason Bobby Lee was up there for me was just the consistency and how good he was for such a long period of time. Even when he got froze out by that spider-headed knacker, Ruud Gullit, that, disgracefully threw him into the shadows, didn't give him a squad number. He come back as a defensive midfielder and he was fucking superb. On the ball, he was calm, composed, winning a tackle, spraying it around. If you remember, he got the number 7 back, when Bobby came in, he put that ball in for Shearer for that worldie against Villa. And he still says that it was the ball that made the goal, not Shearer's shot, which is brilliant. But I just love Rob Lee, everything about him, his character, his confidence. He had a little bit of arrogance about him, which I thought was brilliant. England international, and I just think that a player like that, for the consistency and everything that he did, was just absolutely unbelievable. So for me, he was number 1. But there's a lot of names in there, guys, that I think, either one of them could have been kind of 3, 2, 1. There's one I want to pull out for you, PK. I loved him, not just because he was possibly the most handsome player we've ever had. It was Johan Cabaye. What a player this guy was, man. Skill and just a nasty little bastard as well, wasn't he? What a player.
He was, again, he wasn't a player blessed with pace, but he was a player who had vision and could pass the ball. But again, he would have been higher on my list had he not fucked us right off, wanting a move to Arsenal that he never got. And then ironically, pissed off to PSG and sat on the bloody bench for 12 months or 2 years, however long he was there. What a waste of a career, but he was so good. But on the flip side, you can understand why he pissed off from Newcastle United. We had no ambition again. It was playing under Pardew, was he not?
He was. Cabaye was so consistent. You talk about consistency of players. Brilliant. I don't think I ever saw him have a bad game. I honestly can't remember him having one bad game.
Even when he was sulking, he still played really well.
Unbelievable. Always the best.
Seriously talented, and he scored. And here's the fun fact, I guess. He scored the winning goal at Old Trafford in the league for the first time since 1973.
My favourite ever away day. My favourite ever away day.
You were that one.
Yeah, December. It was December 2013, I think it was. Late end of 2013, something like that. It was just playing the yellow kids, the Brazil shirts.
Yeah, we did. Could you imagine Cabaye playing in that midfield with Joe Linton and Bruno now? He would be that missing part that we're looking for, wouldn't he?
100%. Yeah. Mark made a good comment there. And do you know what? He probably doesn't get enough credit. Graham Carr, when he went and scouted all these lads from France, when he got Cabaye and he got Ben Arthur and he got Sissoko, and you were like, Debussy, you're like, where the fuck did you get all these players from? You know,
brilliant.
Yeah, I think we got Kabay for about $5.5 million. It was a release clause from Lyon, wasn't it? You know, Sissoko was 1.75 million. A player that would never make my top 10, unfortunately.
For obvious reasons.
All the attributes to be a great player, but what a sulky twat he was. I mean, Graham Carr was absolutely brilliant and absolutely wasted with Mike Ashley as his boss.
Oh, you mentioned there, Chris, about Sorry, you mentioned there about Kabay and if he was playing in today's team with Bruno and Joe Linton, what a partnership that would be. What do you guys think in the Premier League era has been our best midfield two partnership? Which two do you think have been the best? Would you say Kabay and Tiote? Would you go further back and go Lee and Batty?
Probably Clarence Acuna
and Bruno and Joe Linton.
Okay. Who did Fu Maka play alongside when he came on for his 20-minute cameo at this club?
God, fucking hell, he was atrocious, wasn't he?
I think you've got to go Tiote and Kabay have got to be up there, lads.
Do you know? I think for me, yeah.
Difficult, isn't it?
It's hard, isn't it? Because I mean, Gary Speed and kind of, was it either Genus and Dyer who were in there with him? Remember when Speed and Genus played for a bit? He's not even on our list, Genus.
Genus had a phenomenal first season. But do you know who semi-killed his career? Sir Bobby. Because he was like, he bigged him up a little too much. He was likening him to Paul Scholes. And then Paul Scholes came to St James's Park and Man United stuffed us 6-2 and just tore us apart on that day.
And this Roy hat-trick, wasn't it? I think it was. Was it Scholes hat-trick?
I was either Scholes or... Yeah, I think it was Scholes scored a hat-trick.
Scholes hat-trick. I think because Scholes and Rooney loved scoring against us. But I remember seeing Genus bossing Vieira off the park at St James's Park. We played Arsenal, and I couldn't believe this kid was 19 years old or whatever he was at the time. And I said to my dad, "This kid's going to be an England captain." And my dad said, "Fuck off." It turned out he was right at the end, my dad. But yeah, he wasted talent.
Career went downhill. Yeah, his career went downhill very quickly. I don't know why. Injuries as well, I think.
Yeah, I think the Lynchman's probably right, in all fairness, for the way they complement each other. You got to say Tiote and Kabay, probably, the way they complement each other, I'd say.
Very possibly,
But you, PK, you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think I can disagree with that for sure. I think there's some... I don't know if we're going to come on to a few players that we've missed out on, perhaps.
Yeah, we'll come on to the second, but just before we do, there's a player that was on the list there. We need to talk about him, not just because of what he did, at Newcastle United, but just, what everyone thinks about him in the game as well. We were blessed to have Gary Speed play for Newcastle United for such a long time. Unbelievable player, leader, warrior, skill, strong as an ox, great in the air, could play any position on the park. We haven't got Dyer here, Lynchman, so I'm going to come to you to step in and do your best Welshman impression here. But how good was this guy at us, even though he was getting towards the end of his career? How good was he at Newcastle United, mate?
You think about Newcastle United legends, this man comes to mind almost instantly. Made over 200 appearances for the club. Such a hard worker, and he was always motivated. But he had that versatility in midfield. He played a few different positions throughout his Newcastle career. He was so good in the air for a midfielder. I don't think we've had many better at heading the ball than Gary Speed in terms of a midfielder. He was that good, model professional. Not many compare to him. If you go back and think of the greats in terms of his passion and dedication, he'll always be remembered as playing such a big part in those 2 FA Cup runs we had in the late 90s. Goals he scored and the performances, to get us to Wembley, and easily Kenny Dalglish's best signing. And Dalglish isn't fondly remembered at all for a spell at the club, but it has to be said, one of the great things he did do was bring Gary Speed to the club. And we never really replaced him, did he, when he left in 2004, I think it was. Yeah, a truly incredible man, one of the greats of the game, not just Newcastle, but the whole game, Premier League, everything. A Welsh legend, just missed out on a top 3 spot for me. I put him at number 4, but I wouldn't argue with anyone who wanted to put him in, top 3, number 3 or 2. I think you would be fairly deserving of a top 3 spot.
And I think one thing that people forget is in his first season when he played wide left for us, so the old-fashioned left winger, he was absolutely shocking, and he was subjected to the Boo Boys at Newcastle. So for 12 months, he wasn't liked here. He came from Leeds, didn't he? He wasn't liked.
Everton he came from, wasn't it? It was Everton.
Yeah, we got him from Everton in 98.
Right.
Yeah.
So he did not have a good first season. And for someone like him to bounce back get put into where is probably, and then he played wide for Leeds and then wide for Everton, I think. To come back and bounce back after that first fairly poor season, Di might disagree with me, but it was just a magnificent footballer and obviously a magnificent human being. And you know what? He started the Welsh Revolution as manager, didn't he? Wales were nowhere, and he started to build that golden, what is now, I suppose, almost a golden generation for them moving forward and getting into that World Cup. It all started with Gary Speed.
So sad we never got to see him manage Newcastle United, guys, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
He would have been magnificent.
He would have been an unbelievable manager for us. But it's a great comment there, just to lighten the mood after that line there. Jeff in the comments has had a great comment about Genius. He says, Genius, I can't get him off the bloody telly now, even on the World Cup draw, for fuck's sake.
It's on the One Show, isn't he?
I was going to say, I think he's actually made more appearances on the One Show than he has his Newcastle United career. If you go back to his stats and Wikipedia, it might actually be the case. Maybe someone should put that down there.
I think he's been groomed for Gary Lineker's Match of the Day job, isn't he? That's what they're eventually looking at him.
That's what the opening of it
as well.
He turned up to the opening of an envelope.
He would. Fumaca played in the same side with Rob Lee. Jesus Christ!
There you go, PK.
Stole a living. But
do you know what? Just before, sorry, Chris. Just before I know we're going to go on to these who might have made the cut, etc., etc. I looked down my list, and we looked down the two lists that you guys have got.
Let's get your list up, PK. If Mark can get your list up, let's see yours first, and then we'll go through the rest of the guys. So there's PK's list. Go on, PK.
There you go. Terrible photo. Jesus Christ! Every single one of those players, aside from David Batty, by the way, who doesn't like football. Never liked football. He was just a footballer. You've never seen him since he's retired. Every one of those players waxed lyrical about Newcastle United. Rob Lee loves Newcastle United. Gary Speed loved them. We know that. Ginola, you see his face light up when he talks about Newcastle. Ben Arthur pushing for a move back here. Apparently, he's about 83.
Would you take him on a free? Would you take him on a free for squad?
No, we're not bollocks. We're not bollocks. It's fine than me. But they all wax lyrical about Newcastle United. You'll add Joey Barton into that list we spoke about earlier. They loved their time here. Sadly, for the majority of them, their time was not long enough.
You're right. It's a real shame. Lynchman, let's get your list up then so we can get the guys who are in the comments to finalise your list. And, you can see your list there, mate. Just a few words about the guys you've chosen, mate.
I'll tell you, I'll talk a little bit about Ben Arthur because you mentioned him there, PK. I mean, I think we've talked to death about everybody else, but talk about, one of the best talents I've ever seen. On his day, absolutely unplayable. You talk about goals as well, brilliant goals. I mean, my word. The one against Bolton in 2012, that's one of the best goals I've seen in the flesh. The one against Blackburn, remember that one as well? Oh, my days.
I kept telling him, pass it, James. I kept shouting, pass it, you greedy bastard.
But, what's an unbelievable player. I would consider him, if you look at kind of players now in the modern day, someone like a Son at Spurs. He was that good. Someone like an Eden Hazard at Chelsea on his day. I genuinely believe Ben Arthur on his day was as good as those two, but he didn't have that work rate, that kind of commitment to the game. I think he liked the drink, didn't he? Like the party and but my God, phenomenal memories. Yeah, phenomenal memories of him and Cabaye and that side. Just incredible. I think if you look at Maximin now, I think Maximin's trying to replicate a lot of what Ben Arthur did for us. He's just not quite there, is he, at that level?
I wanted to say. Yeah.
Maxi's not as good. Well, we'll get my list up, mate. Then we'll jump into the notable absentees. So we'll finish up on my list. There's some comments in there with a name in particular I want to pull up. But looking at mine there, again, I'm the only person here who's clearly saying and put Bobby Lee as number one. I'm not going to go on any more about that. But you can see the quality of the players, like Mike was said in there. The quality of the players in there. At the time, some of them were real diamonds in the rough. I mean, we signed Bobby Lee for under £1 million. As PK said, we got Cabaye for an absolute snip. Kieran Dyer was, one of the best young talents around at the time. We managed to get him. Obviously, Ginola, Batty, Kevin Nolan. Again, Kevin Nolan, was brilliant for us. Probably more in the Championship than the Premier League. But, out of all those players there, I think the one player that really excites me more than any of those, even Bobby Lee, I think PK touched on it, is Bruno Guimaraes. And if we're still doing this podcast in 5 years' time, we should be back on here probably saying that he's number one without a shadow of a doubt. But
I said this on last week's show about Callum Wilson. I put Callum Wilson at number 6.
Did.
But if Wilson can have a great season next season, stay injury-free, kick on, I think Wilson could be considered maybe 4 or 5 if we look back on this list in 4 or 5 years' time. But I think Bruno certainly will get to number 1. easily.
I totally agree. There's some brilliant comments in here about some of the absentees. I want to kick off with Gini Wijnaldum, which people have thrown in the comments there as well. I'm just going to quickly take this, lads, before I get your take on it. What a player this lad was. What a player. When he first signed him, I was saying he's the best player we've had since Robert Lee, 100%. But as Jeff rightly says, he could only play at home. He was the invisible man when we needed him. Just to get your take on that, PK, Gini, he doesn't make any of our lists, mate. Do you think it's because he just basically disappeared after half a season?
Yeah, he was a homer, wasn't he? I think he scored 12 or 13 goals in that relegation season.
Brilliant, man.
Which was amazing.
4 against Norwich, though.
I know 4 against Norwich, and they're all 4 assists from Sissoko, by the way. He never scored a goal away from home for us. So, yeah, very talented player. Went on to much, much better things at Liverpool.
Of course he did.
With significantly better footballers around him, of course. Would I have him back now? No. Was he voted League 1 flop of the season that I saw on Twitter today or yesterday? Yes, he was.
Oh dear, that's not good for him.
You talk about honourable mentions as well, Wijnaldum certainly, but Sissoko. Did anyone consider him? I thought Sissoko really did have some very good moments. Did he play alongside Wijnaldum? I think the two of them were playing alongside together, weren't they? Yeah.
The problem with Sissoko was he's just an absolute shithouse, wasn't he? All he did was moan about wanting to leave. The minute he got a bit of adulation, a bit of praise for his performances.
I mean, you talk about best pound for pound signings, though. The profit we made on selling him. There's
only one.
I mean, unbelievable. Well, Rob Lee has to be considered the best ever because 700,000 from Charlton. Kevin Keegan always said as well, didn't he? The best signing I ever made at Newcastle. Rob Lee.
Pound for pound, yes.
Pound for pound.
Yeah, he's got to be the best. Geordie Jackson, a comments there with a lad that I nearly put in. I actually changed it at the last minute, as the Lynchman said. I tweaked mine when I had a little sneak peek.
Yeah, you didn't want another Les Ferdinand moment, did you, mate?
I didn't, mate. No. I had a mare with Les Ferdinand, but I was having a bad week, as I said at the start. But Keith Gillespie's a great shout. I mean, Keith Gillespie, people forget about it. Went such under the radar because of the pure outrage of selling Andy Cole to Manchester United. Getting Keith Gillespie and Lynchman, just for what was he, like 1.34 million or something? How class was Keith Gillespie here? How class was Keith Gillespie when he was at Newcastle?
He was brilliant, but you look at the wingers we've put on this list: Ginola, Robert, Solano. He doesn't get anywhere near them for me. If we're just doing a top 10 wingers, I think Gillespie would certainly appear on that list, maybe at kind of number 9, number 10. Yeah, very good. You remember the Barcelona 3-2? We talked about that on last week's show with Tino. I mean, I was the only one to put Tino in my top 10 strikers, but that was Keith Gillespie's best game for the club. You got to say, though, we did get the wrong end of the deal, didn't we, with Man United?
just a bit. But Gillespie was good, though. Gillespie was a good player, though.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah, but who did we go on and sign after Andy Cole went?
Well, yeah, a player that I left off my list.
The madness.
Yeah. Yes.
But then we then sold him a couple of years later. Oh, I was talking about Les Ferdinand.
I'm talking about Shearer.
Well, Les Ferdinand was the direct replacement for Cole, wasn't he?
All right,
he was at that particular time. Mark's in the comments there as well. He said if Tim Krul could have distributed the ball, Ben Arthur would have had way more goals and assists. You're probably right. I mean, he didn't do it quick enough. That Bolton goal is a perfect example of when he did do it. And Ben Arthur was just capable of running rings around anybody on his day. But I think the problem is with Ben Arthur, as we've kind of touched about, this is the reason I left him out, and ASM got nowhere near my list for probably the same reason. Just for me, very frustrating players, too inconsistent. I think they brought me more frustration than they did joy. The moments with Ben Arthur was the moments that you remember were just like, fucking hell, how did he do that? Wow. But then there was so much of a fucking hell, what is he doing? He's pissing me off. And that's why Ben Arthur was off my list, lads.
Purely made my list because he was one of the very, very few players that would get you off your seat with excitement.
Oh, he was talented. There's no doubt about that.
The same maximum's the same. We'll just need to see a bit more consistency from him.
Yeah. Ben Arthur could have played in that entertainers team under Keegan. He would have been
I think so.
Keegan
comfortably.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There was funny. There was a couple of players we were talking about as well. Missing off. What about Lee Clark? How good was Lee Clark, man?
Lee Clark was a magnificent midfielder, but fell to pieces in the box, didn't he, Mr. Jigsaw? That's the only problem.
Jigsaw, that's what they call it.
But he was, a Geordie boy as well, of course, and I know it shouldn't really matter where he's from, but he wore his heart on his sleeve, didn't he? He gave shit, and he was a good footballer.
He was a brilliant footballer. He was, and he kind of got
easily made top 10.
Yeah, he kind of got ousted out a little bit, didn't he? Mike's got a great memory there when he said, do you remember when Shearer punched Gillespie? I think everyone remembers that story, absolutely. But I'd love to have seen that. I absolutely love to have seen that. Jeff's talking about Chrissy Waddle. He was pre-Premier League for us, Jeff. So we just stick to the Premier League. Same with Gaza. I think you put in the comments there as well. Obviously, Gaza would get in this if it was overall, I suppose, just for the sheer ability that he had.
Gaza arguably would have been number one if we'd been doing it all the time. And you look at players like Waddle, Keegan. I mean, Keegan, you could consider him a forward as well. Yeah. But be interesting if we were doing this list based on the whole. We might do that again. We might do that again, James. Yeah, we might do a whole lifetime of supporting the club, and then Gaza will be certainly in there. It always makes me wonder because I remember seeing a documentary about Gaza a while ago where he was at Lazio, and he was obviously wanting to get home, and he said, "Is there any interest from home as in Newcastle?" And he kept asking, and I don't know if we were interested or anything or whatever before he went to Rangers. But I often think if Gaz had come home back at Newcastle, would we have seen the best of him like Rangers did? PK, do you think, if he'd come back?
Scottish football's shit. No disrespect to anybody. Scottish football was absolutely ideal for Gaza.
To be fair, though, when he played in that league in the 90s, Scottish football wasn't as bad as it is now. Yeah, maybe
it was all right. It was fairly competitive.
Another top player,
Rangers and Celtic were competitive.
Yeah. The rest of the team was shite.
It was a two-club league, right? It has been for a long time.
It's not wrong there.
Gaza's.
I think Keegan didn't want to take the risk on him with his attitude, wasn't it? That was what it was. I think Keegan didn't really kind of want that kind of that character around, which is really sad in a way. But
had Keegan not gone by then?
I think it was Dalglish. I think it was Dalglish at that point when he was looking to come back. I think it was.
Yeah, might have been.
I thought it was even later than that, perhaps. But I may be wrong.
When did he go to Middlesbrough? Was that the early noughties? Was it when he went to Borough?
He was done when he went to Middlesbrough. He was about 14 and a half. Yeah. Well, he's 15 stone when he went to Middlesbrough. So he was fucking.
Then he went to Everton, didn't he? Had a season at Everton, from what I remember as well.
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah.
Just say everyone in the comments there mentioning Gaza. This is again, guys. This is strictly Premier League.
Strictly Premier League era.
92 onwards. So we just weren't considering Gaza because it's just Premier League.
That's a fair comment by Jeff, though. I think that injury at Spurs fucked him. That stupid tackle he did in the FA Cup. And I watched a documentary about the way the media were hounding the lad, and they've got a lot to answer for because they just ruined that lad's mental health. Absolute disgrace.
I've asked, shame. I've commented and I've asked the question. I know we're going off topic a bit. Many times that would things have been different if he'd signed for Man United and not Tottenham, not the bright lights of Tottenham, but
might have been protected.
Worked under Sir Alex Ferguson instead. You'll never know. An alcoholic is an alcoholic, I suppose.
You say that as well, but Alex Ferguson let players like Ryan Giggs do what he did.
Well, not in the early days.
In his gambling,
not in the early days. He used to chase him.
So it is in the early days. That classic. Yeah,
you never know. But in the early days, he didn't let Ryan Giggs anywhere near a camera for the first 2 years of his career. He never did an interview. If you noticed, he was pretty. Yes, he liked to drink, obviously, but he was a lot stricter, and that's why he brought those players through to win the league for right away through the 90s.
He stopped them hanging around with Lee Sharp as well. He was a serial shot.
That's right.
Lee Sharp. He was like something out of Phoenix Knights or Lee Sharp. There was another player that I thought of as well. We mentioned it before we come on, and I think both of you recoiled at this. I think he's massively underrated, right? Scott Parker. I thought Scott Parker was decent when he was at us. He was a good player under a bad manager, Scott Parker. I might not have put him in my list, but I've got fond memories of Scott Parker.
He was captain was he with us for 1 season or 2?
He was the captain who held up the Intertoto certificate.
Yes, he was.
If you remember,
he made a living. He made a living out of spinning around in circles in the centre circle. That was what he did. That's all he did.
I think it's difficult to put these workhorse type players in these lists, aren't there? I mean, when you're younger, my first memories of the entertainers, it's the flair players that really get you excited. You mentioned Lee Clark there. I mean, I saw him, watched him in my first season as a 6-year-old lad. But you don't really understand football as what you do when you get older at that age. And the workhorse characters, the likes of your Parkers, your Batties, your Lee Clarks, they don't really stand out so much.
They go unnoticed because they're supposed to go unnoticed.
Yeah, fair point.
Another honourable mention for me, and I think someone mentioned Rule Fox earlier, but on the opposite flanks, Scott Sellers.
Yeah, Scotty Sellers was brilliant when he first got in the Premier League.
Wonderful left foot.
He was a superb player. Yeah, I think Liam O'Brien was before the Premier League, I think, wasn't he? Liam O'Brien.
Here's a question for you, lads. I think Liam O'Brien was at very early 90s.
Just
because we weren't in the first season of the Premier League, were we?
No, we weren't. No, we
It
weren't.
was a
When
season
Leeds
after
won it,
that.
we weren't there. Yeah, it was.
Here's a question for you, lads. Out of all the players that you picked in your list, obviously Bruno is still playing today. If you could choose anyone from that 10 to be in this team next season, who would you pick?
Suppose I've given you my answer, haven't I?
You have.
I would just I'd slot that number 8 in there, Johan Cabaye.
What about you, Chris?
Oh, do you know what? Given the way we're playing with this kind of, front three type of thing, with a 3 midfield, I think I'd go for Robert to play in that 3 a little bit further up to the left hand side, and just give you that thunder bastard strike out of nowhere that he can, and just the amount of goals you would get in this game with the way the modern ball's designed. Robert would score you about 18 goals a season the way he strikes the ball, I think out of all of them, Robert probably, I'd say, yeah. It's
a brilliant question, right? But out of my top 10, probably 8, 7, certainly 7 of those players would walk into that team now. Right? They are that much better. So, but you're right, if you had to pick one, that's a brilliant one. What about you, James?
Joey Barton.
Joey Barton.
I'm joking.
Not with VAR, James. Not with VAR. He'd be fucked, mate. He'd be set up every week.
No, I think you made a good point, Chris. The way we play the 4-3-3, I think I'd have to pick one of the central players, and I think it would either be Lee or Cabaye. And I'm going to go with Cabaye, like PK. I'd love to see Cabaye and Bruno together. It'd be an absolutely unbelievable partnership. Those two. Be incredible.
If we could find a player, I know it's hard to find players that are exactly like other players, but if we can find a player that's like Johan Cabaye in the modern day game, as PK says, slot him into that midfield. I mean, we'll have a few more rumor has it videos coming up, guys, in the next few days. I know you all love them, and we love the comments and everything else. And there's talk about Ward-Prowse going to West Ham, and I know we've been linked for so long, and someone like a Ward-Prowse could be a good player. He's not as micey as Cabaye, but he gets on the ball, he makes things happen. So you just never know. But if we could find a player like that, bloody hell, that would be absolutely superb. Mark's in the comments there. He thinks slotting in Tiote in that defensive role, and let Bruno and Joe Litton use the legs to go box to box. That's a great shout as well, Mark, to be fair, because I think that would be...
It is a great shout, yeah.
It would be a hell of a sign. But I think, as we said there, lads, great lists in all fairness. We could have made tweaks here and there, with the exception of Joey Barton, obviously, James. Great lists.
Yeah, a lot of fun putting them together, lads. You do enjoy doing these, don't you?
Absolutely. And listen, lads, we love the comments. Everybody in the comments, we love a bit of that. A great bit of feedback. It really helps the banter flow when we're doing the shows. We're going to be back next week with a slightly different show. We're going to be coming back with a special, which is a financial special on what we could spend in the transfer window. Adam, who comes on the channel, he's tied up a really good guest, so stay tuned for that, guys. And then we're going to be back soon with another top tune. We're going to go back to defenders. I don't know how many we're going to manage to smash together out of them, because that'll be an interesting list of who's the least shit to put in. I think it's probably going to be the best.
That might be a bit more difficult, that one, than this week's.
A bit tricky. But as I mentioned at the start, if you haven't already, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We're over 1,000 subs now, and we absolutely love everybody who's jumped in to do that. We're going to have loads more content, as PK's pointing us down below. Loads more content over the summer, and then we're really excited to kick off with a weekly Evermore podcast, as we've been doing this season for next. And really excited about seeing who we're going to sign, when the transfer window's all done and dusted. But until then, we're all done here today. So thank you so much, guys. Let's keep supporting our team of Core United, and we'll catch you later. See you later, guys.
See you guys. Take care.